Right.
Hi, Cate. Welcome to the Yes You Can podcast. I know I had shared with you previously a little bit about the context of the podcast, but just as a refresher, what this is all about, cover different topics, have different attendees. It's all about really stepping into the highest version of ourselves because what we tell ourselves what we believe we become. So that's the whole idea behind the podcast. And yes, you can. And so excited to have you here today. I know that you and I had some offline conversations about your services and your core focus. And I believe we definitely overlap between how I'm serving my community, how you're serving your community, and how we can work together to amplify that between the two of us. So I'd love to start off by just understanding a little bit of your story and what inspired you to create Divine Alchemy in school, as well as I think you're doing some other focus areas on social as well. So if you would just tell me a little bit about your story, how it began, and what led to the inspiration.
Okay. Shoot. All right. I'll start here. In 2016, I had a near death experience, and during that experience, I was shown um so many things: why I came to the planet, what I'm doing here, what we're all doing here. I can't tell you if being a walk-in means that I walked in that day and I wasn't this sold before that day. I'm really kind of torn about that. But I'll definitely say that that is when this journey really started for me, was this experience that I had, which was which is a very long story, but it had to do with extraterrestrials and a really eye-opening experience. Since then, I have been on a mission to figure it out. I was just mind blown, and I really needed to know. I was given the opportunity that day to experience this experience from the male and the female perspective. So I actually have a male counterpart who is also here having this experience. Which is and so this is giving me a very unique perspective, especially when we start talking about self, like ourselves, and the narcissistic relationships, and overcoming that. I think that male perspective has really helped me overcome that situation. um let's see, I'm a speaker.
Tell me a little bit about your experience with that relationship dynamic. I'm also familiar with the divine partnership that you're referencing, and I feel like that is a large topic in itself. But tell me about your prior experience as it relates to the narcissistic abuse and how that affected you personally and how that affects what you're doing today.
Okay. So I don't know if you've heard this before, but I've heard many people say that when a empath comes in contact with a narcissist, once they overcome that experience, it gives them superpowers. I don't know if you've heard that, but when I first heard that statement, I was like, well, where are my superpowers at then, right? And so I always honor my gifts, and so I had been asked. There was this man who had his leg amputated, and he had asked me for help. He needed help. He didn't have anybody to help him heal. And so, me being a healer, I chose to do that for him. I literally went and made this experience for him the best possible experience you could make this. I mean, it's something tragic like losing a limb. I didn't know what the word narcissist meant before this relationship. This person completely broke me. I mean, it was unbelievable to me how somebody could be so cruel and just so, I didn't know existed. I didn't know that those types of human beings existed before this experience. I ran his business for him. I nursed him back to health. I did everything that I could do. I really thought that when you love somebody like that, that you would have that in return, you know? Like, how could I go this far to do this for this person and have them be just so terrible? But they were. He was. And it was very difficult to get out of. I am very fortunate. I have a brother that's amazing, and, he's 6'4", and, he's been my protector our whole life, so I will say that that played a big role in me being able to get o out of that relationship because, without him, I don't know how that would have gone. I
How
can't
long were you in the
I was it was about a year. It was a year. Yeah. So,
and so
um go on, sorry.
how if you were to think about how you felt in the relationship, it sounds like you were can you hear me okay? Okay. It sounds like you were definitely overgiving and not receiving in return, which is very, very common, of course, for us empaths when we're in that empath narcissistic relationship to be the overgivers. And also to learn how to be a receiver, where that sometimes attracts those that don't want to give, right? We're sending off a signal inadvertently, like you said, but when we become the super empath, once we really come back to a place of wholeness within and self love, then we're not sending off the signal that we're willing to tolerate no reciprocity anymore. And we have different boundaries and expectations. But prior to that, right, it's very common as empaths for us to be overgivers and to maybe even in some sense feel like we need to prove our worthiness, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm curious if you noticed a distinct difference from the time that you were in the relationship, and I don't know how long ago that was, but you said you were in the relationship for a year, of how you felt and how you showed up for yourself versus, after doing the healing work on yourself and how you feel and show up for yourself today.
Oh, yeah, I will say my superpowers that I received from this experience was the ability to say no, stand up for myself. I'm capable of drawing the line in my life and respecting myself on a level that I wasn't capable of doing before the relationship. So I'll say that that's definitely played a huge role. This wasn't very long ago. It was during COVID. So, it just a couple years back. And I've I've always been a fairly strong person, but this situation broke. It brought something out of me that I had never really experienced before. And this person um like, he would stand over me, I would be, like, literally in like, just in tears every day, and he'd be like, "Boo-hoo-hoo, look at me. I'm crying." And I mean, he was like, it was,
Yep.
I just
Mocking and shaming you
yeah,
for
oh, yeah,
your
I mean, it was really and it really threw me off guard, and I had never dealt with this before, and I thought that if I loved enough, if I gave enough, if I did enough, that I could change something, that I could show him, "Hey, this is love," and so I thought that that would make him a better person. That's what I thought. It didn't work
Yeah,
out
yeah,
that way.
it's well, and it's interesting because I don't know about with your journey, but as I'm learning, because we all have our own journey and learning, and there's verdicts out on whether or not that's possible for a narcissist because it does require self reflection in order to fully develop. Um, but when we do that, right, essentially what we're doing is enabling their behavior. So we're teaching them, even if it's not intentionally, we're teaching them and reinforcing that behavior to continue because they just expect more and more and more instead of
Yeah.
that ever being enough. Or, like, to your point, where you feel like if you gave more love, they would receive more love, or be willing to give that back. But it just ends up being kind of this endless pit. And I remember having a conversation with somebody once. I used the reference of, we need to be mindful as empaths not to continue to pour into a leaky bucket, right? Where it just continues to just drain and drain. So I know that you and I had discussed a little bit about your self love journey too. So I'm real curious to learn just a little bit more about what that has entailed and how you might be taking what you did for yourself as a self healer, right? You consider yourself a healer, and sharing that with others now too.
So I believe that when we are able to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, I love myself, I love me, we have to completely love and accept every single experience that we've ever had, because every single one of those experiences has made us who we are. And without even one of them, we wouldn't be this person. So to have self love, you have to love all experiences. And so that's that's definitely where I'm coming from as far as, like, when I work with other women. I work with a lot of young girls. A lot of like young, like early 20s, late teens. I've worked with a lot of girls that have gone through a lot of like abuse. And so I tend to I try to teach that as much as I can, which is, it's very difficult for a lot of people to let go and forgive, because you really have to come to a certain part inside of yourself to do that, because it's,
And and I believe I saw that you do some of that work not only in this dimension, so to speak, but on a quantum basis as well. Is that right?
yeah, yes, definitely. Yeah,
So some
that's
of
a
that
lot of it.
less conscious programming.
Yeah. Yeah, the reticular activating system, which is the filter that we perceive reality, that filter is actually, that is how we're having this whole experience. So
Mhm.
this is something that I've really, it's a new thing for me, but I've been really working on. This has been a big part of my focus, is figuring out, okay, how do we reprogram this reticular activating system, because we've all been programmed. But now how do we reprogram now to have an experience that we favor a little more?
Yeah, that's a lot of the core work that I'm doing in my community is sharing some of that. It's still admittedly being built out to some extent, but core focus is sharing what I've done for myself and doing just that, basically creating and knocking down everything to the studs and creating a completely new foundation and framework. Which includes, not just the reset of the belief system, but really hardwiring, right? So deprogramming what was already in place subconsciously by bringing that to a conscious awareness, and then reconstructing based upon what our desired experience is. And I make it sound simple when I'm saying that, but it's not.
But it's
It's
not. Yeah.
very deep work, and takes a lot of practice and repetition because, as we know, that's also part of the hardwiring is the repetition. So you think like, basically, essentially, when you go down to that level of to the studs, it's almost like some people refer to it as being reborn. And in a sense, it is because you're like the brand new infant that hasn't had any inputs externally yet. Right?
Yeah.
You've brought it
Yeah.
down to this base level, and now you're constructing that reality for yourself based upon the belief systems, the values, and the new framework that you're putting into place. And it's quite amazing actually, because as you start to repeat that, we do start to see some of the external reflect that back. We start to see different patterns in the relationships that we attract as well. So, I know myself, I had this long history of continuing to, as I like to describe it, attract and allow the same character in a different suit.
Yeah.
And that was definitely subconscious, not a desired outcome, but I was on that loop. And so that's where that, initial bringing things from the subconscious to conscious is really the initial step, because if we don't have the awareness, we can't change anything, right? So
Yes.
I definitely can see, as I mentioned, a lot of overlap between what you're doing, what I'm doing. We have slightly different, community focus, but a lot of opportunity to continue to complement one another. So I'm really, really excited to continue to explore that with you. And I don't necessarily work with women at that age or stage. So I think that that's also a beautiful way in which, we can maybe shift our focus based upon what somebody's needs are. Are there any specific, like maybe one or two quick little inputs for yourself that you would share with the listeners around maybe some new practices or mindsets that you put into place that have helped you along your self-love journey?
Yes. Let's say, so what I have found so far, at least at this point, and I will say this, my work consistently changes my, what I mean, my opinion on things, my views. Like, I mean, things are always changing and developing. And what I have found at this time is that our this particular activating system works with, of course, like you said, repetition. And so, I have been working with, like, going back in and going through all of our chakras. So the chakra system is, okay, actually, I'll start here. This is my baby here, is, we have this 12 chakra system. And, like, maybe 2012, I started hearing this thing about these 12 chakras, and I'm like, "12 chakras? Like, I thought we had 7, like, where's 12 coming from?" Right? And, so I started looking into it, and everything that I found online was different. Everybody had a different opinion, they had different names, they had different locations, everything was different from person to person. So I realized, okay, this is something I'm gonna have to go within, and I'm going to have to find where my 12 chakras are. And so, I drew this diagram in my living room, and then every time I would go into meditation and I would journey through this chakra system, I would then add to this diagram. And so over the years, I have developed this system now that connects us to the sun and the planets. And like with the what is it, Father Sun and Mother Earth, which makes the human being Merkaba. And so I call it connecting the cord to the console. And it's like, remember back in the day before we had the Bluetooth remotes for your PlayStation or Xbox, you had the one with the cord that went to the console, you know? So I kind of see it as like that. Like it's like we're playing this video game and we're reconnecting ourselves to the console. And so when we find that connection and we have full control over the avatar again, this is when we can really start doing some major programming. And so
That's a
that's
really great
kind of,
way of explaining it. Hmm.
yeah, that's been my main focus as of recently. And this is a super powerful for me. Like all my manifestation work, all my I do all of that working with the DNA and the chakras, and I have a whole system that I have been developing around that. So,
That's really exciting work. I do a little bit with the chakras as well, but from a slightly different angle, more so around identifying and recognizing where there may be energy blockages or where we can intentionally activate. Um, but not necessarily in the quantum, more so looking at taking that insight and awareness and coupling that with various modalities to support and enhance the opening of the chakra system. So there
yeah,
must be, I'll be interested in diving into that. It sounds like probably another conversation, but diving into that further with you, because I think there's definitely some synergy there.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. And I think that is very important for our 7 chakra system to be online, just like as you're referencing. It's very important for all of those chakras to be cleared and working correctly before you venture out and start connecting with the rest of them, you know.
Absolutely. And it makes, and just I guess for any listeners that are not necessarily familiar, just a little insight of the chakra system that we're referring to is we have the 7 core chakras that are part of our body, starting from the root up through the crown chakra. So it goes, what is it? Root, solar plexus, uh, nope, sorry, root, sacral, solar plexus, heart chakra, throat, third eye, and crown. And then, Kate, if you would add the others, do you have a naming convention for the other?
Definitely, definitely. So the there's there's three over our head and two below our feet. The two below our feet, the first one is the ley lines of the planet. So that is the Earth Star chakra, which is like I guess located, about 12 inches below your feet, which is obviously it's a quantum chakra. So it's really wherever you feel it you want it to be, really. And then the center of the planet is the core chakra. So the center of the planet is our um, root, or not root chakra, our core. So very core chakra, where the chakra system starts, is at the center of the planet, and then it comes up through the ley lines, up through our body, and then this is where we kind of get into like a multi-dimensional area here, because we do have a soul star chakra, which is located right above our heads. Now, this is also your soul star, which is whatever planet you first sparked on, which this is, yeah, that gets it really, um, whatever. So then we have the moon and the sun. So the moon is the next chakra, and then the sun is the 12th chakra, if that makes sense. If that makes sense. So it's kind of like the soul star chakra is above your head, but it is also whatever planet you first started on. And that's where it really becomes a very kind of advanced system of working with the chakras, because it can get that confusing at that point. But I think anybody that's working with them, though, and is familiar with this work, I mean, you become familiar, fairly quickly. So
I understand and follow, and it may
yeah.
or may not resonate with some of the listeners, and that's okay. I always encourage everyone to really lean in with curiosity and compassion versus judgment in a general sense. And if there's something that any listener is curious about, they can certainly reach out to you. We'll provide the contact details, and or to explore further on their own as well. Best to keep our minds open to understanding and growing and evolving, versus necessarily closing them off just simply because something is a new concept to us. So
My
I
yeah, my
appreciate you.
truth my truth doesn't have to be your truth. You know what I mean?
Right.
We all have a different truth. So that
Absolutely. And I know, so like I said, some people may connect to this and some people may not, and that's absolutely okay. And I think it's really interesting too. There's a lot more understanding coming forward, I feel like, to many about quantum mechanics and the quantum
yes.
field, because that isn't, as a lot of people used to consider to be just a woo woo type of situation. It's actually scientifically proven through metaphysics that we can actually start to measure and quantify that experience. In fact, I'm sure you're aware, Kate, but that the Earth actually has a certain particular vibration and resonance itself that we're able to track and monitor, and it's called the Schumann resonance. And of course, as human beings, we all have a particular energetic resonance as well. So there is some of this that may be very new to others, and also when it comes to the quantum, I again encourage people to, if you're curious about it, lean in, do some research, find out a little bit about it. There's definitely scientific evidence to show the existence of some of these concepts that may be new to some.
Definitely.
And and so, if there's anything else you would like to share about the community that you're building on school, and or your social presence, how people can get in touch with you, who would be best suited? I think you said you do tend to work with younger women or like young adults. So if you have
I
anyone
would
that you feel is best suited for your practice, I would love for you to share that.
in that aspect, I do. My one of my big I have so many focuses. I've been working with parasites lately with the with parasite cleanses my online I have a new website and it's the Divine Alchemy OS, which is a um parasite removal and 12-strand DNA activation process, I guess. So
Okay, interesting.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
what can we expect about that? That's brand new. That whole concept is brand new to me. So if you could help
Yes.
with the listeners as well as myself, what is when you refer to a parasite, are we referring to something energetic or are we
Yeah, this
referring to
is
something that we're
something that
consuming?
is came into my awareness about a year ago. A good friend of mine is a I mean, she just kept parasite and I'm like, it's kind of whew, right over my head. You know what I mean? Like I and so I started researching these parasites and we actually from what I have found so far, like up to 90% of the ailments that human beings struggle with at this time are actually parasites. And so when really started looking at this, it was mind blowing. Like they about 100 years ago, they basically took that whole the out of Western medicine. They came in and they said, "Oh, parasites are a third world problem. You guys don't have to worry about it anymore. We're not going to teach about this in Western medicine anymore." Well, what happened is the whole rest of the world does 1 month a year of parasite cleansing. Every country on this planet, except for this one, does parasite cleansing every year. And there's a woman, I can't think of her name right now. She did a bunch of research on the centurions, I believe in Okinawa, Japan. There's a large group of centurions, which is people who live well over 100 years and they're very healthy and active. And so she went to study them, like how are they how are they doing this, right? How are they living this long? And what she found is that they are actively eliminating their parasites. Like she said that there was like these two little teenager bottles and this old woman had taught her about them, whatever. They basically it was clove oil, wormwood, and neem. So like all organic, natural things. And they were using these to basically cleanse their body of these parasites on a regular basis, which is creating this longevity for them. And so I really dove into this and I have found some very effective ways of of working on eliminating these parasites from our body, which is a very personal journey. It's something somebody has to really decide they want to do because it's not easy. I'll say that. It's not
Sure.
easy.
I was not familiar, like I said, with this at all, with the concept, but it makes a lot of sense to me. I've done as part of my journey, and part of my practice with clients is to focus on the dietary support and the needs to support in particular oftentimes the chakra system, but some of that does also involve a cleanse or consuming what our bodies need most, which is not the same for everybody. So it makes a whole lot of sense to me. I just wasn't familiar that was the case. I mean, I've certainly heard, as I'm sure some others have, of the juice cleanse and things like this, but this is very different. This is targeted to live, active parasites that are
Yes.
living within our bodies. Okay,
That we are
interesting.
all actually experiencing. And I met a woman in Sedona a couple years ago. This beautiful, healthy vegan who was, I mean, she was the picture of health, right? And she tells me about this parasite cleanse that she had done and how she had eliminated these parasites from her body that were and I was thinking, oh my gosh, if she's got them, then I definitely have them, right? And so I guess that was kind of my trigger to really look into it. I'll have to send you some information on it because once you go down that rabbit hole, it's very interesting what you find. definitely.
Sure, I'd love to learn more. And have you noticed for yourself, or have your clients shared any specific changes in how they
Oh,
feel,
yes.
how their bodies are acting? I mean, certainly understand over long term that this would affect our longevity, but
Oh,
are there any
definitely.
physical changes or energetic changes that people have
Yes, in
reported?
fact, I think you'll like this. So oxytocin, right? Oxytocin is what our these parasites basically absorb your oxytocin before you can enjoy it. So, as our body creates oxytocin, the parasites will actually take it from you and they consume it. So, when you start eliminating the parasites, you actually get to start having your oxytocin back, which from what I've gathered as of recently, that they've found that females, we actually need oxytocin quite a bit more than males do. They found that like our bodies react to oxytocin the way the male body reacts to dopamine. And so that's something that so since I have started doing this elimination of these parasites, I definitely can feel a hike in my oxytocin, just my overall like, those are our happy,
Right,
our,
and happiness.
yeah.
Right, yes.
So I can feel that most definitely. And I'm at about the 7 week mark as far as when I first initiated the parasite cleansing. So and it is a lifelong journey. Like, I mean, there's once we start, you don't want to stop because it's it feels so good. It feels so good to get them out of your body that it's a beautiful, amazing feeling. And um something that I've discovered is, that little voice that will tell you you're not good enough, or that little voice that's like, oh, like just kind of like for a lot of people, they have that problem with that voice that will
Usually that
just.
inner child that still needs a little bit of love. Yes. Mhm.
Exactly, and from what I have discovered, and this is totally take it or leave it, but apparently these parasites are capable of doing that to us because they feed off of the chemicals that our brain is creating when we have different experiences. So sadness or frustration, those kind of things, they actually will try to provoke that in us so they can feed off of the emotions when we have them.
That
From
makes
from
sense.
what I
Essentially, the way you're describing it, is they're like an inhibitor to the the oxytocin release. So,
Yeah,
and that oxytocin release is what brings us, like you said, it's like the happiness chemical, right? So it's what brings us that joy, and happiness. And
yeah,
so it sounds to me like the way that I'm picturing it, right, is like putting a cap. It's like putting the cap on the top of the bottle or something. That's
yeah,
inhibiting
yeah.
from continuing to grow if they're feeding off of it. That makes a lot of
Yeah,
sense.
exactly. Yeah, so then you eliminate them and then you can have, your oxytocin back and eliminate that little voice that wants to make you feel, bad about yourself or
So
whatever, that
interesting. And because
struggle.
and I hadn't heard of it framed that way before. I think that, I'm a big proponent of there are so many modalities out there, and sometimes it's not a one size fits all. And sometimes it's, let's take a little from, from box A, box B, box C, and mix them
Yeah.
together for what works for us. And so it's interesting because I've always said from the inner child piece, which I've done a lot of work specifically on that too, is, the goal is not to abandon the inner child. The goal is to embody the inner child, to become one and to become basically like the best friend, right? So when
Mhm.
that voice comes up, the goal is not to drown it out, which is what oftentimes, people might try to do because nobody wants to feel that way. Nobody wants to hear that. So they might distract themselves or, and in some worst case scenarios, they might fall into addictive behaviors or patterns. So it's interesting that I hadn't heard of that being addressed in this way versus, the actual inner child focused healing as well. And maybe both would be like a supercharge for really addressing what in you're defining as basically a self-worth issue, which does
Yeah.
often lead, again, it goes full circle with the beginning of our discussion, coincides with an empath who is seeking that love and support by pouring into somebody else versus pouring into themselves. So that's really interesting. That's really, really
So,
interesting.
something as an experience that I had, which I think a lot of women listening can relate to this. But when I had my son, I love my son. I wanted him with every fiber of my being. To be a mother was that was every second of it. I've loved every moment. But when I had him, and because I'm aware that there's other things out there, I had a very definite, very loud voice telling me to kill him after I gave birth. And for about 6 months, so I'm like hearing this voice and I'm like, where is it coming from? Because I know it's not me. I know I'm not saying these things. So I go to this new mother support group, and there's all these other women there. And I decide I'm going to go ahead and bring it up, right? Even though it sounds crazy and people are going to think I'm nuts, like I'm going to bring it up. And so I bring it up, and every woman in the group had had the same experience. And so apparently this is part of postpartum depression is this, right? So I'm like, okay, so where's this coming from? And like, I guess as of recently, when I've come together, when this information about the parasites, kind of like maybe sheds light on that. Because I don't know, I don't, I still haven't discovered where that came from. You know what I mean? It is, and as soon as I came across the knowledge that it was affecting other people and I wasn't the only one, it went away. But for 6 months, I mean, I
That's
had a
really
very
wild. That's really wild that you're sharing that. Something that
yeah.
I don't largely share, but I experienced this as a child, and I definitely believe it was related to postpartum as well.
Uh-huh.
And that's all. I mean, I'm not real intimately familiar to speak on that in great detail, but obviously, it is a form of depression and it has a lot to do with the chemical imbalance after giving birth and, the hormone changes in the body. So there are many ways in which that can be supported. And I certainly could see where a cleanse that helps to increase the oxytocin in your body naturally would also benefit mothers and their
Mm.
newborns because
Yeah, which
everything that we
I'm not
yeah, I
sure
know
if
that
that
might not really
even like
be where you're going with it, but everything that
yeah, yeah,
we
yeah,
carry forward, goes towards our newborn infant too, right?
yeah.
Especially if you're talking about breastfeeding or something of that sort. So it's very interesting. That's I think that's a real hardy
Mhm.
topic to get into the postpartum depression, but
Right.
very, very interesting that how that shows up. And yes, I mean just the chemicals within our and hormonal balance within our body and how we can
Yeah.
address that through alternative mechanisms too, not just simply through a prescription written out, not necessarily opposed to traditional medicine, but there are many ways that we can address things holistically as well through,
Well,
whether
I
it's
found that
through parasitic
that
cleanse or
specific experience really is hugely helped by just the understanding that you're not alone. And so many women that have that experience, you know, they they don't want to say anything about it because they're mortified. You know what I mean? They don't want people to think they're crazy. They feel like, oh, why would I want to hurt my child? But it's not them. They don't want to hurt their child, and at least from my experience, because I've dealt with a lot. I think on and that's a whole nother subject, but like bringing awareness to that and helping women know that they're
I
not
think that's
alone.
a real beautiful thing because I can see where you're coming from. I didn't personally experience that when I became a mother with my children, but I can empathize in the sense that I could see where somebody might feel a sense of shame, right? Or some type of insecurity about speaking about that because if they don't realize that it can be much more common, then it makes them feel like it's just something wrong with themselves. So I think
Yeah,
that's a beautiful point that you're bringing up. And also too, just in a general sense too, for women to have that support, whether it is mothers or, women in general. Like, I mean, I'm very big on have kind of just been throwing this around lately, but I'm very big on bring back the sisterhood because really, as human beings, like our nature is to thrive in community.
Hmm.
And that's how it had been done for centuries.
Yeah.
And with our evolution, we have lost some of that connectivity with the extended community or extended support in some respects. And so there's something really big about that too, that piece of it, about finding not being afraid to think that, anything you're going through, whatever it might be, is something that is just specific to you, but to reach out and seek support because there are many others that are going through something similar and we
Yeah.
heal in community.
Yeah. We definitely do. And something, I don't know if you know this or not, but women, um, they quit allowing us to gather, and it was called a brothel. So you weren't even women have not been allowed to come together and have that community for a very long time on a lot of levels, because there was then this label. I don't know if you're aware of that or
I'm
not,
a
but
little familiar. I want to keep that condensed just a little bit. But yes, I know what you're referring to, but and I well, only because I don't want it to be so specific, because
no,
I
yeah, I
do
got
think
you.
like whether it is in the sense of like the belief systems or practices, or whether it is in just a more of a general sense. We do need we thrive when we're with people who we can connect to, who understand, who can be that extended support, right? And when one rises, we all rise, right?
Yes.
And that has such an amplified effect on the entire. I mean, we couldn't even possibly measure it, right? When you start to think about the impact that community, let's just say a community of 5 individuals, has on the broader community.
Hmm.
So I hear what you're saying, and I do think sometimes in part there was a fear of that. Um, but the opposite, this seems so cliche, but the opposite of fear is love, right? And love
Oh,
is
most
what we
definitely.
see for healing, and we do that most effectively
Yeah,
together.
for sure. Well, I think that's what you and I have to offer also, is that the benefit of like two women coming together and propping each other up, giving each other a voice, and not having jealousy or competitiveness, or what I mean. There's so much of that that has really plagued so many females, unfortunately. So I
Yeah,
think
it
it's
really
time for
has.
us to, yeah, for us to come together and to realize that we have each other's back, and that we are working together.
Absolutely. I have said before that ego competes and spirit collaborates.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the idea, right?
Yeah.
And I also want to add, because I know that it can be intimidating maybe at best sometimes for individuals to think about women coming together, or this, if you will, like this empowerment perspective. And this doesn't have to be so extreme. I'm not sure why we live in extreme binary thinking so much. It doesn't have to be so extreme to say, oh, women are taking over the world, or it's all about the women and not the men. That's not the point. In fact, actually, and it's
No.
a whole other topic, we need partnership in general
Yes.
and more
Yes. Yeah.
collaboration. So it's not about a man versus woman, but more so about how do we continue to provide that support and that evolution and collaboration amongst women and amongst men, right? So
Right?
it's
The
not
wisdom
about
of the woman to bring the male aspect into it also, and not push it away, you know?
right, right, right. I mean, there's a reason why we have two genders, right? It's part of our
Yes.
human evolution and we need that. And so I just want to make sure that I give a voice to that so that it's not misunderstood, that when we talk about women coming together in community and helping to heal and elevate, that it is to exclude men by any stretch of the
No,
imagination.
not at
I
all.
think there's just some commonality that sometimes we naturally gravitate to.
Yeah, no, I'm a huge advocate for the yin and the yang. We most definitely need the union of the male and the female. That's where wisdom comes from. I mean, it comes from us coming together and understanding that we need each other. There's a role for each each gender to play. And so we need to understand they both need to be playing that role. It's
Yes,
it's not
definitely.
it's not
And
one more than the other.
right, and I see again, this is a pretty hardy topic as well, but I see that that has changed over time, and I don't know if I would say we should fully go back in time, but I also think that we've lost a little bit of sight at moments of what are our natural gifts and natural strengths. And I am a big proponent of us continuing to amplify that for one another, not diminish it, and certainly not compete.
Yeah, yeah,
Competition creates division, right?
yeah, yes.
So,
Yeah, anything that has to do with divide and conquer is not is I you know, what I mean, as soon as I hear divide, I just completely turn it off. You know, it's definitely that it's the one and only tactic that's been used against human beings for forever. You know what I mean? Is the divide and conquer, and it seems like humans fall for it over and over again. And
yeah,
so I really try
it's
to.
it's it can be challenging because well, again, another hardy topic, but we typically need to fully, in order to fully appreciate that, we have to come into union with ourself, that harmony within. And I know that goes back to what we were touching on with the divine feminine, divine masculine, before we are at full capacity for that partnership. So this can get convoluted because this is where things like codependency shows up, right? Or in some cases, the trauma bond, like we were discussing as well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot there. And that's why I mean, I don't know about yourself, but in my community, I certainly I do not sell a quick fix. It's not a quick fix.
No, there's no quick
It's pretty
fixes.
heavy.
It's
No,
actually not
no, it's not
easy.
like you can just go to the doctor, get a prescription, and boom, you're back into
Yeah.
your full authenticity.
Yeah, it's not easy at all. In fact, to ascend and evolve is hard. It hurts. You know what I mean? It's not easy.
Yeah,
And I tell people that all the time. It's not rainbows and bunny rabbits. You know, it isn't. It's difficult and it hurts. And you know, and but that's what it's about. You know, that's how we have this reality set up. Is it requires these experiences in order to have growth. So
that's
it's
right.
important to
That's
do
right.
that.
Right. So that contrast gives us perspective as well that we can then embody and alchemize right into wisdom
Yeah.
that moves us forward. So absolutely resonate and agree with you on that. And as I've said before, sometimes we have to go through a whole lot of darkness to get to that light, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful, right? So
Definitely,
that's why this
definitely.
work is so sacred and so important.
I think that anyone when to shine the light, you must have the darkness also, you know what I mean? You have to have those equal levels of both of those aspects, you know,
That's right.
to do that.
Yeah, that's right. Again, I mean, like you said, the yin and the yang, right? That's such a
Yeah,
great way of giving a visual aspect to it. Mhm.
definitely. I'm so glad that we have come together and
As well, and
well,
I know we touched on some very deep topics, but we only skimmed the surface. I'm sure that
right.
we could go on and on, but I am very very thrilled that we have connected, and I'm so grateful to have you on the podcast. I am also grateful to have you as part of the community. Again, for listeners, if you are interested in connecting with Cate, she has a community on school called Divine Alchemy. And then, Cate, you said the website is Divine Alchemy IO, is it?
A Divine Alchemy OS.
Oh, sorry, divinealchemyos.com or just Divine Alchemy
No,
OS.
it's Divine Alchemy OS dot POLSIA dot APP.
Okay,
So
I'll
it's
include it in the comment
yes,
section
yes,
for
yes,
listeners.
I
Take
think
a
you
look.
can find it just at the Divine Alchemy OS, it will come up, you know, like
Okay, if you
that.
Google that, but I'll share the details in the comment
Yeah.
section of the video as well, so people can take a look. And then, is there anywhere else that you would point them to if they're interested in connecting with you or learning more about your work?
I have a website, catelove.net. So, Kate with a C, catelove.net. And you can find all of my social media and stuff through the website because I have an Instagram and a TikTok, so I do quite a bit of stuff on there
Beautiful.
also.
Well, I'll include maybe perhaps if you have a QR, or we can include some of those links within the comment section so people can find you. I look forward to continuing our partnership and collaboration and getting to learn more about you. Thank you again, Kate, for being here today. And I look
Thank you. Thank you.